All right, we're recording. Everybody, welcome, welcome. We've got a big turnout here. And we're really excited about having Glenn Kaufman tonight. Glenn has spoken with us a few times, and the way I met Glenn was at an Avatar conference in Mount Shasta. And he was there speaking, and I really loved what he had to say. One of the things that Glenn talked about was how when Uranus entered Taurus, that all of the food would be going sky high. Do you remember that prediction, Glenn?
I do. And it's not over.
No, it has not altered since then.
No, I mean, we're still dealing with some of that for the part of the Jupiter-Uranus fallout. And until Uranus actually gets into Gemini, anything can happen. I mean, we've been watching that with the agricultural systems. We've been watching that with the economic systems. We've been watching it with personal property rights and so on. These are all Uranian and Taurus attributes. I remember I used to have a saying, last time Uranus was in Taurus, we had victory gardens.
Yes, I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, and now with Uranus and Taurus, I've been pushing people, they needed vitality gardens so that they could, grow their own food and take care of that, because we were going to be losing the quality and the quantities of food. So I actually wanted to start this out by listening to all of you there. I wanted to say, okay, I'm a Sun, Mercury, Neptune, North Node, and Moon in Scorpio with Leo rising. And so almost
Very
half my...
Very powerful. Yeah, so all of us give him a big hand because he's got so much to tell us.
Yeah, tell me again how long you want me to go.
Well, an hour and a half.
Okay.
If you can, and that last 20 minutes is Q&A. Does that work?
Yes.
All right. It's all yours.
And so the one other thing I wanted to say, having to do with your joke, I almost have half my chart in Scorpio. My wife has almost half her chart in Virgo.
So you get a very funny joke.
Yeah. Okay.
You could see the guy in the bar when he sneezes.
Even our rising signs are sextile. Everything is sextiles in the chart.
But you and I have Cancer rising and Sun and Scorpio in the 5th.
Who's this?
Me.
Oh, okay.
Same as you. Same as you.
No, I Leo rising.
Oh, Leo. Oh, well, my breast moon is entering Leo.
That's my saving grace. Otherwise, everybody'd be scared of me. So okay, so tonight's topic, walking your talk in the age of Aquarius. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, focused on the future. Again, half my chart's in the 3rd house, and so it's data collection. And I remember when I first started studying astrology back in the late 70s, I said to myself, oh my gosh, we're going to lose our books and we're going to lose our privacy. And so I started collecting books, and I have thousands of proper books now and so on, and keep separate computers to maintain my privacy. But it's all about what we focus on, right? It's forecasting, prophecy, prediction, and so on. You have to focus on what you're looking at, and then there needs to be a resultant. Well, one of the things I find interesting is the word prophecy, whether you spell it with a CY or an SY. The CY is the collection of prophecies. It's the stuff that's been written. It's the stuff that can be validated. But prophecy with an SY is the act of prophesizing, the act of predicting, and so on. And I like to say that prophecies are for a people and predictions are for a person, and what do we do when we are predicting or forecasting or prophesying or so on and so forth, right? It's always, what do we focus on and what direction are we looking, right? We tend to analyze the data, we compile the data, we can make some sort of conclusion, and then we proffer that information to our clients, to the public, or so on. And so there's the act of prophecy, and then there's the resultant, or the body of knowledge that is maintained or collected. So one of the things, all right, so prophecy, it's a divinely inspired prophetic utterance, according to my New Century Dictionary I hear on the thing. And I think, okay, divinely inspired. I'm biased, but I would say that astrology is divinely inspired. I don't think there's anybody but God that could create what we see all the time. Just the harmony and the mechanisms and the systems and the cycles and so on. And then the act of prophecy is, from the definition of the New Century Bible again, which is 100 years old, by the way, giving warning or indication of what is to come. And so it's not just the bailiwick of the religious communities. It's not restricted to religious topics. It's any sort of warning or indication or forecasting of what's to come. All right. And thinking on that, I was thinking, okay, so when somebody invents something, when somebody has an epiphany, is that a prophecy? Is that a prediction? I think it is. When you think about this kind of concept, okay, it's not verbal. And of course, we know verbal communication is the least of our communication. And so the idea, the savants in the world, the geniuses, the Teslas and the Edisons and so on, they're prophesying too. They're just doing it with mechanical means or with products. So, and I've had to think about this a lot, okay, is how do we focus on the future? I used to have the whole series I called Focusing on the Future, you know, and in so doing, focusing on the future, how do we respond to what we calculate is going to be coming down the pike, especially in a world nowadays where almost anything can become everything, you know, and everything seems to be possible. You know, it can be captured on video and be constructed by AI. You never know anymore, all right? And astrologers have been, you know, wishing for this and thinking about this for decades, maybe even centuries, that when we get into the age of Aquarius, astrology will, you know, take its rightful throne, the heir apparent for astrology. And I have to say, I've always sort of twisted the words for prophet with a FIT and prophet with a PHET. And, you know, wondered, okay, where's the line? Where do you draw it? Where do you or when do you cross the line and start making money on profits and this and that? And when should you not? And so on and so forth. And I've come up with the idea that I've come up with a new word. And I think this is going to be something that we're going to be dealing with in the Aquarian age. Okay. And I'm calling it propherty. Propherty. And it's when people are going to be able to come to the point within 2 generations, I'm sure, of being able to make predictions, but then being able to own those predictions and almost copyright the things that can come about from those kind of predictions. I mean, think about this with the advent of, I started astrology when we had to do this stuff by hand. Then we got the personal computers and so on. Now we got AI kicking out chart calculations for people. And when you take this to its furthest conclusion, I don't think we're that far off from the concept of what I call pre-chart. And if you remember the movies with, what's the guy from Mission Impossible? Tim, the little short guy who plays all the Mission Impossible movies. Anyhow, Tom Cruise, all right? Pre-chart. If you do not think that somebody's going to take some AI-loaded computers and train it to be able to pre-calculate where people are being born and when, and what their capabilities will be prior to their birth. You're not functioning on the level of Aquarius, okay? It's huge. The symbolism of the air signs, okay? You got Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. It's built right in there, all right? The air signs, the duality, the yin and yang, the purposeness, the light and the dark, and the awareness of where we sit between the two of them. With Gemini, they're tethered together, the two sides, okay? With Libra, it's disharmonious. They're not aligned. But in Aquarius, not only are they untethered, but the glyph is harmonized. It's two cycles that are in perfect harmony with each other. Okay, and so the idea of people eventually being able to copyright their predictions and owning, thus profiting off of those predictions, is something I think that's sort of a dark side to astrology, but it is something that we need to deal with, okay? One of the roles as an astrologer, as I see myself as an astrologer, is to see and then plot the easiest, most efficacious path to the future, or through to the future, for my clients, for my classes, for whatever, okay? And so what's prophecy? What, was it prophetic to say that in 2016, when Trump was running, it's like, oh, 2016, fine, okay, but 2024 is the year where he's really going to be in the news. He's really going to be taking the stage, okay? Anybody who looks at his chart, you can see this. You can see his stellium up in Gemini up on the top of the chart being triggered this year by Jupiter and then Uranus over the next few years. Okay, but is that prophecy? Is that prediction? Or is that just compilation, analysis, and conclusion? And so where do we go with this? All right, I think since the late 1980s, for about the last 40 years, we've had this real conglomeration of planets in Capricorn. The triple conjunction back in the late 80s, early 90s, and then Pluto going through Capricorn and all of the different things, Saturn and Capricorn. It seemed like this 40-year window that we've had is sort of the crossover period going into Aquarius, and it's been led by Capricorn. And I honestly don't think that we are totally within the age of Aquarius yet. I like to say that we're Aquarius crowning, okay? And what responsibilities do we have? Are we midwives? Are we participants? Are we just watching the action? And many years ago, I wrote an article and I called it Occupy Aquarius. And it was like, okay, the Aquarian age is coming. What are we going to do about it? All right. Even if we are in it, we're only at the beginning of it. We've got like, what, 200 generations to go? And I learned this many years ago. I don't even remember where I learned it from, but it seems very prophetic, okay? And that is when a culture changes from one age to another, you don't just move right into the love and light of the Aquarian age and so on. It's much more like a pendulum, like a clock, a pendulum clock, where suddenly it starts swinging wildly from right to left, from the extreme to the least extreme and so on. And I think what we're seeing with the AI, I think what we're seeing with the information and the misinformation and things along that line, I think we're experiencing one of the extreme swings of eventually 3 or 4 generations from now, it will start to slow down and even out where we would like it to be with the age of Aquarius. But we got a ways to go. I'm constantly telling people, especially in my classes, if you're going to study astrology, you have to understand patience, okay? You have to realize, you see an 84-year cycle, a 200-year cycle, things like this. They're not going to happen tomorrow. They're not going to happen when you want them. You may not even see them happen. Okay. But it's our duties as astrologers to lay the seeds. We're the Johnny Appleseeds of the Aquarian age here. What we do over these next few generations sets the standard for the next 190, 100, 200 generations. So we need to own it, okay? And along the lines of the idea with the joke that you were talking about, hey, baby, what's your sign? You know, I think with the Aquarian age, one of the things that we need to be doing is with any horoscope columns, whether they're in a newspaper, whether they're online or whatever, they should come with a paragraph that talks about the idea of read not only your sun sign, but read your moon sign for how you're going to feel for the day, and read your rising sign for how other people are going to see you for the day. I mean, that's a short version of it, but AFAN and the groups that are taking care of the ethics around these kind of things, OPA, they need to come up with the paragraph that gets put out with every single horoscope column that we can find, because this is going to help raise the awareness to where we would like it to see. I would like to see the empty chair, the professor of astrology at Harvard University. I would like to see that filled again. I'm probably not going to see it, but I would like to see it happen where my son gets to see it. You know, so and I've called it turning signs into signatures. You know, it's not, hey, baby, what's your sign? It's kind of, hey, baby, what's your signature? Your sun, moon, and rising sign. I mean, just that alone gives so much more depth, and yet I don't see it. I've tried to talk to AFAN about it. I've tried to talk to people about it. I don't even get a response back on the ability to be able to do something like this. And this could be completely pervasive, all right? When we start getting into the fields of how astrology can help other fields, I think one of the reasons that we really haven't been able to get a unified field theory in the world that's workable for everything is because we're not using the astrological tenets. These have to be woven into the theory itself, especially ultra low electromagnetic frequencies, the cycle of planets, okay, these kind of things. And again, as science becomes more, as astrology becomes more recognized and validated by science, it's going to become less and less accessible to the population, okay? When you realize that you can diagnose system weaknesses in the body, do you not think that the insurance industries, the medical insurance companies aren't going to want to get control of that and start charging people according to that? Do you not think that this stuff is going to we're okay, I think you know where I'm going with this, all right? Even as we start to see some sort of reconciliation and reintegration into the Christian world, less and less is going to be available to the common man or woman, all right? Because what's most religion about? It's about having an intercessor, okay? No, you can't do it yourself. That's pagan, that's Gnostic, that's, you know, no, we need to be civilized, okay? We need to have, you can't talk to God yourself. You can't be a spark of God. What about these bioluminescent cells that we have where we have light inside of our body? Oh, that's just a quirk of nature, okay? But more and more as science comes to understand this, as we start to realize that iridology is the chart just reflected on the eyes, as we start to understand that acupuncture, the meridians are just the 7 major and 12 major meridians in the body, or the planets and the signs and so on, this is going to become extremely useful information. And if you think we have data scrubbers now where companies are making billions of dollars by selling our data to people, we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to start protecting our birth data in a way that remains our property, that you know, and how do we do this as astrologers? How do we walk that razor's edge between wanting to make this stuff as available as possible to as many people as possible, to unfetter them from the shackles of misinformation or misbelief, or even just the concepts of education? Where do we draw the line? You know, the astrology organizations that are out there now, it's going to become critical that we have open borders, that we do not malign each other, whether you're doing horary or you're doing Jyotish, Eastern or Western or Uranian or this or that. There needs to be a united front. And at the moment, the way the world is being structured, we're being asked, we're being led into fracturing our society into mini groups, into little groups. It's the Machiavellian principle, you know, divide and conquer. And so astrology, I think, is one of the underpinnings to a unified field theory, and sooner or later we'll get there. All right. You know, I took a peek at why WikiLeaks, not WikiLeaks, the wiki information, the dictionary that's online, Wikipedia. And Wikipedia, that's it, right? And it's amazing how biased it is, how it's been taken over by the scientific community, and there's very little positive about astrology. They're still quoting Sean Carlson, who was somebody that I debated back in the early 1980s in Berkeley. And the guy says, so what you're saying is if you're born, we can just take the baby and wrap it in a slab of meat, and then we could change the birth date of the baby. And I just put my hands, you know, over my face, and so you're not going to get this. You know, you don't understand. But that's what's still on the Wikipedia pages, all right? That they're going back to the tar baby incidents and the Sean Carlson skeptics and Randy the magician, and it's like, oh, come on, all right? There's got to be some new people. I don't ever see Rob Hand, you know, I don't ever see people like that being quoted, at least not in the last 10 years or so anymore, being quoted in the astrology magazines. You know, yeah, Michael Luton, this like that. Yeah, because he's the jester. He, you know, he knows how to take the information and deliver it with a smile, you know, and in a way, that's what we need to do. I know I'm being kind of serious here, but the answer is not about being serious. The answer is about being focused, laser focused on what we need to do. All right. I mean, think about it. Astrology, it can be used in politics and international affairs. Okay. I have prosecutors from DC that ring me up as they want to know, okay, they want to start a case against somebody and they know it's not going to get in front of a judge for 2 or 3 years. What's the prevailing winds going to be like in 2 or 3 years? They're using it for politics. You get somebody's chart, you know where the weaknesses are, you know where the triggers are, you know when they're going to be down and hurting, and same thing for countries. This stuff gets used for politics all the time. What was that old saying? I think it was JP Morgan. Somebody asked him if all millionaires use astrologers, and he said no, but all billionaires do. You know, the ruling class has been using astrology forever. Nowadays, they don't call it astrology. They call it a cycles analyst. They call it a consultant. They call it, you usually go in the back doors. You don't go in the front doors anymore. All right. But politics, economics, biology and systems analysis, right? Psychology, behavioral sciences, sociology, religions, history, even geology is affected. Now that we have Google Maps and now that we have programs and we have these AIs, I want to see what I'm calling real rising signs. And that has to do with if you're born, you know, with a huge landmass or mountain range or something between you and the actual horizon compared to the apparent horizon, that's got to mean something, okay? We've never had the capabilities to be able to study something like that. We do now. All we need to do is put Google Maps together with the longitude and latitude of the cities and so on, and we can start researching that stuff. We can start analyzing that stuff and seeing, you know, what kind of data we get. The implications and applications of astrology on the world at large is, you know, I'm talking to the converted here, you know, but what do we, how do we take this forward? You know, there needs to be ethics, there needs to be morals, there needs to be a combination of focus. And I really think that we don't just need unions or organizations or so on. I think that we literally need to return back to the guild consciousness in society, especially when it comes to astrology, because the guild, as I understand it, unlike a union, which was pretty much there just to take care of the workers, the guild was there to advocate for the art or advocate for the science of whatever that guild stood for. It wasn't just the protection of the proponents or the practitioners. And please stop calling yourself a practitioner or astrologer. Medical doctors are practitioners. They are the ones that are practicing medicine. We're not practicing astrology. At least I'm not anymore, not after 45 years. I think we are more interpreters or even intercessors in a way, but we are definitely astro interpreters. Okay. And clients should not be coming to us for us to give them answers. They should be coming to us for us to help them decide what questions they should even be asking themselves so that they can get their own answers. And then we can help them towards the answers. But the more we give clients answers, the more we take on their karma and have to deal with it this life or whenever, you know. But the idea of, you know, giving them the ability to fish instead of giving them the fish to eat. That's the saying. I love the idea that there are so many astrology schools now popping up all over the planet. You know, I love that. Well, I used to be on the steering committee for AFAN for like 2 years back in the late 80s. And gosh, all we were doing was sending lawyers to go defend astrologers that were getting busted for fortune telling. I mean, that's where we're at. We're lucky now. We don't really have that much to deal with anymore in that sense. But what we do we have the skeptics, we have the scientists, we have the rationalists. Okay, I've come up with a saying. I love it. Science was made to be broken. Okay, you know, any of the tenets that we have, even astrological theories and tenets, they're made to be broken or expanded upon or validated in some way. It's never just this set system. And here's a thought example I would like people to think about, and that is, if you think back thousands of years, when they were studying astrology, what were they studying? They were studying pretty much the sun and moon, and maybe and eventually the stars, and then eventually more of the planets, and then eventually now we have hundreds of asteroids, and we have black holes and dark moon this and dark moon that, and so on. Within 100 years, there probably isn't going to be a single spot in the sky from yourself, from where you are, look out in any direction, in any part of the universe, where there isn't something that we can qualify and then quantify as being some sort of astrological indicator. And what does that end up becoming? Eventually, it's all just going to become just one wide, giant unity. And we're going to be back at the beginning of the commercial where, I remember this used to be around about 20 years ago. There was a person in bed, and they were lighting a cigarette, and they go to blow out the match, and they throw it up like this, and the camera pans away from them really quickly, out past the roof and up into the sky and out into space, and you see all the street lights, and you see all of the different electrical lights from the planet getting brighter and coming together and together and together into this one big light, and then all of a sudden you see somebody else putting out a match, and that's what the light was. And that's where we're going to get with astrology. I mean, think about this. Uranus and Gemini, the advances that we have made. Remember the old movie, the series, The Time Tunnel? Anybody there old enough to remember that? Where, you know, this is going to become reality when they start hooking up AI-generated frequency modulators, all right, and start using it at the proper times of the season. We will be breaking the bonds of Saturn. That's what we were supposed to be doing ever since we discovered Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So, so think back to this, right? Politics. Any questions at the moment up until now?
I just wanted to add that Ray Merriman is starting a legacy group to address some of those ethical issues that you're talking about. And the legacy group is senior astrologers who've been around 30, 40 years and above that have been there and done that. So I thought it complemented what you were talking about.
Yes. And this is the stuff that the budding astrologers, this is the practitioners of astrology, the students of astrology need to be propping up. If these are membership organizations, this is you paying it forward, okay, into the Aquarian Age, to be able to solidify this stuff and to come up with the standards that are cross-organizational, cross nations, cross cultures, and so on. All right. So, and you need to understand, astrologers nowadays need to have a technical understanding. They need to know the astronomy. They need to know computers. They need to know research. They need to know the digitization of data so that they can work with this stuff and to verify the guild standards that I'm talking about. And so it's not, what's the saying? It's not your grandmother's astrology anymore. You know, again, the ruling class has always used astrology. They just use all the tools that are there in the toolbox. Okay, so they're not, in economics, we got the forecasting, especially the Saturn, Jupiter Saturn cycles, especially when it's going through Taurus and Scorpio, right? Again, how do we keep people from chasing mammon, chasing the mighty buck? You know, how do we prop up or strengthen a person's morality or ethical foundation in life, that they can withstand the temptations, that they can and use this science and art as it's supposed to be used, not for you know, to make sure all boats rise with the tides, you know, not just a mega yacht somewhere. So strict oversight. Okay, it's got to be legal protections too. You know, there was. I cut my teeth on this stuff when people were getting busted for fortune telling because it was just the ignorance, you know. I used to love to create this little character in some of my forecasts. I called him a Vijananda, ignorance is bliss, you know, and it was, that doesn't count anymore, you know. We can't use that as an excuse. Behavioral science education systems, turning signs into signatures, all right? The online universities. We need to, I haven't really looked into the intern programs anymore. I've been doing my own thing ever since I stopped teaching the how to calculate a chart for NCGR back in the 80s. Do they do intern programs anymore? Do we have boards where people are analyzing in real time, not some written out paragraph of how one would consult this person in a reading or so on, but in real time with real questions and real issues and real freakouts from people and real challenges from others. And can astrologers stand up to this? You want to be an astrologer, you want to be a professional astrologer, you want to be able to help people weave their way through the river of life and give them a life jacket in a way. You better, one, have studied your ass off. You better be in therapy. You better understand counseling. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. Astrologers nowadays, you need to have classes in consulting and counseling and so on. It just, gosh, I remember one of my old teachers, Richard Eidemann, used to give as an example. He said he had a client that came to him who was totally stressed out. Like 5 years earlier, he had gone to an astrologer. The astrologer looks at the chart and he looks up and looks at the person and he goes, "Do you have cancer?" You know, this is not the way that we need to be doing astrology. You know, this is, and pardon me, Gen Z, okay, this may be my bias, all right, but it sure seems, I'm right on Main Street in Mount Shasta here, and I have people all the time knocking on my door and coming and saying, "Oh, I live in San Francisco, I live in Reading," or whatever. "I just finished an 8-week or 12-week course, and I want to open up an astrology business," you know, and it's like, I want to kick them out the door. You know, I don't. I very gently tell them that they have a long way to go, you know, and I start talking to them about how in the Tibetan culture, you have to practice for at least 12 years before they even let you touch doing a reading for somebody. You know, it's not, you know, I want it now. That's not how astrology works. Again, patience. The idea that we can take the music of the spheres, the harmonies, the planetary music that's aligned to the different planets and use them for healing treatments, use them for behavioral systems in astrology, has only been the surface has only been scratched, okay? And as that becomes more and more capable, the potential of a person's natal chart, the potential of their transits becomes the most personal information that you have. And that there's going to come a point where that information given to the intellectual AI elites is going to turn many of us into, well, not me, I won't be here by then. We turn many people into automatons, into robotics, because they'll just be getting led around by the Google search engines and the astrologically indicated, "Oh, he's got a Saturn transit coming up. Well, let's get him into some physical therapy, and let's get him onto some pharmacological products so we can control this person." I know there are positive sides, okay? But my job as an astrologer, especially one with half my planets in Scorpio, is to play the what if, is to play the devil's advocate, is to say, this is a slippery slope. We need to deal with this.
So Glenn, you're kind of talking about in the future, the actuary tables will actually include the aspects and they make a decision on longevity and health issues, et cetera. This is what you're.
Yes. Yes, and you're going to have health organizations like Aetna or Cigna or Humana or things like this, who see that you have a Mars-Pluto aspect coming up over your Saturn and it's square your sun and so on, and they're going to like drop you with your health insurance, you know, or issues like that, or they're going to crank up your your premiums because of the astrological indicators. So this is coming. It's a logical conclusion about the possibilities of what is the potential with astrology. So even rewriting history, right? Now that we have the computers and we can go back and see, oh, give me the last Neptune-Pluto conjunctions for the last 5,000 years, and oh, wow, look at this correlation, look at that. Up until the 80s, you really didn't have that. Most of the ephemeries, you couldn't go back more than a few hundred years without them being inaccurate. They drift over time. We don't have that anymore. So the astrohistorians that can go back and correlate history to the what was transits at the time, this too can become a teaching. Astrohistorians, the synthesis of lost knowledge with the current tech. Astroanthropology, okay? I mentioned the idea of free chart, right? I mean, I guess a better word for it would be like cosmic eugenics, the idea that certain groups or governments or organizations can hand select before people are born, the people that they want as their soldiers or administrators or advocates or so on. This is coming down the lines too. And it's at most 50 to 100 years away from us, which will still be just the first, 5 generations into the 200 generations of the Age of Aquarius? My wife is constantly saying, well, what is 5D astrology going to be like? Because I'm constantly talking about transits that are happening in the future and that they're not going to be happening for a while. And she's like, but I want it now. How can we jump time? How can we're going to get there too with that. That's the Uranian mind, I'm going to jump a little bit ahead, but just the Saturn, Neptune, and early Aries, we're going to be left to our own devices, all right, come the middle 2020s. I'll talk about that more, but the idea of trying to walk your own path, take the path that's not trodden, but one that you have to machete your way through to be a pioneer. All right, even virtual astrology, I guess I would call it, the 4-dimensional holographic views of our chart. For years, I wish I had the money where I wanted to do it out in Lake Shasta, where I am, where you could see the horizons in every direction with no disruptions. And I wanted, put yourself in the chair, and it was like an outdoor planetarium, but you'd be able to use lasers to show the tracking of the planets against the stars, to show the moving of the stars, but to have it actually be outside, not sitting in some comfy chair somewhere, but to position a person on the earth and to show them that. That can be used for natal analysis. It could be used for weather forecasting. It could be, the geospatial astrology. I've been using that a lot lately, where you lay the zodiac over the equator. And the easy way to do that is you line the Sphinx up with the Leo Virgo cusp, and then you mark off the cantaloupe slices around the Earth, around the equator of the different zones of Aquarius, of the zodiac. And it's been really good for being able to predict earthquakes and storms and tremors and these kind of things, physical manifestations around the planet. And so that's something too that needs to be developed. What happens when we start being born on Mars? This is, do we use heliocentric astrology? Do we use Mars-centric astrology? Where do we go with this? The idea that we've got from Earth-based to telescope-based to galactic base to the universal base and so on. And at some point, we've got to be able to shift the time frequencies in order to be able to continue further on. And so what does that do to the concept of the harmonics and the cycles? And so pre-existing conditions. I'm back at the insurance industry. Somebody's born, with, 5 planets in Aries, okay? And the person writes the medical conditions that says, yeah, okay, we'll cover you with everything except injuries to your head. But somebody with whole detriment in Pisces, yeah, everything's covered but your feet. It's going to get there. How do we shepherd that so it doesn't end up being a detriment? And then there's social media, the Astro News corporations, all right? I've been doing on Facebook, I do this thing, I call it Astrology in the Real World. And something comes up in the news and I say, oh, that's the Mercury retrograde, or that's Uranus, conjoining with Jupiter or whatever. And I'll put it up and says, here's how this stuff is playing out in the world. Here's the news article. Here's what they're saying happened. Here's the transit. Do you guys see the connection? This is the kind of things that we need to be promulgating as much as possible. Best practices, okay, in astrology.
Glenn, can you move your camera a little bit?
Sure. I started leaning down. Yeah.
Yeah, we can only get half your face half the time.
Yeah.
There you
Okay.
go.
Well, that's all right. All my Scorpio planets, I'd rather not be seen so much. It's just, and when the Leo rising, it's just the reputation. You don't need the picture. Just a little. This is something I used to say too to all my students when they start to feel like they were okay. A little astrology knowledge is a dangerous thing. Okay, because you don't realize when you step over the line. You don't realize when you've cookbooked somebody right into some sort of limited opinion of themselves that they never tell you and they never explain it to you, but they carry that with them for the rest of their lives. I've been doing astrology for 45 years now, and this was last year. I had a young woman call me and said, you don't know me, but my grandmother had a chart reading from you, and she just died, and we found the chart and we found the reading that you did for her. And we just wanted to let you know that she talked about that reading to us all of her life, to her daughter and her grandchildren and this and that, and that they had gotten into astrology and that they were using it in their lives. And it's like, we as the astrologer, we're throwing rocks in the pond, okay? The ripples that we make, we don't know where they're going. We just have to hold them in the light, hold them with the highest integrity, that they will be used for proper purposes. And just the psychic astrologers, psychic abilities, the scammers that are out there now, the $5 a minute astrology readings on the telephone and so on. This is, we need to supersede that stuff. All right. So here's where I wanted to stop for the moment and go back and kind of look at some of the transits that we have had that have gotten us to where we are now in the world. All right. And then I want to be able to take some of the future transits that are coming up and proffering what those are going to be offering us in the future. And so I wanted to start off with what I am calling the Mayan blackout. All right, December 21st, 2012. And those 3 days in through there were The sun literally moved in front of the center of the galaxy, of our galaxy. And for the first time in over 5,000 years, the energy that we as a culture, we as written history, have been bathed in ever since most of us can remember. We're talking eons. This energy was there. And then for 3 days, all of a sudden, it got shut off. It got distorted. It got fractured by the sun so that we were not getting the same energy that our bodies had grown accustomed to and so on. And I liken that to like having a blackout or a electrical interruption in your house. And all of a sudden the electricity goes out. And it's not so much anymore, but in the older days when that, when the stuff electric came on, you had to run around and reprogram the microwave and reprogram the clock, and and you had to restart everything. And to me, that is what happened with 2012, December 21st, 2012. And what it did was it unfettered our DNA. It gave our DNA a chance just for a few days to do its Pluto thing, going from the caterpillar to the butterfly, to mutate, to transform, and so on. And we still have not seen what that is going to turn into, but that was part of the changing of the ages, the turning of the ages, and so on. And I call it dumping the cup. And how many years has it been since 2012? 12. We're going on 12 years, right? Right? Isn't that a Jupiter cycle?
Yeah.
Okay. Aren't we going to have the Jupiter back at where it was in Gemini, 8-9 degrees Gemini or so on, where it was when the December 21st happened? And what's the tenet in astrology? Once you have the first cycle and you come around through the second cycle, there's an integration that takes place. The first cycle is more the experience. The second cycle is the understanding and the integration of that information. And so 2024 is interesting from that perspective, in that we are going to start to see now, okay, what happened with the mutations and the evolution that was started back in 2012. It was never, and even all the years leading up to 2012, I was always constantly saying, it's not just one day. It's not something that's just going to happen and bam, it's going to be different. It's just not. That's not how astrology works, And then, so that's one of the biggest cycles, okay? Then the next cycle, I've already discussed it a little bit, is all this Capricorn stuff, the triple conjunction. Saturn, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune conjunction, late 80s, early 90s, and so on. That's a huge cycle in and of itself. And we're really now only at some of the opening semi-squares of that cycle. We haven't gotten anywhere near the first squares, nothing, all right? And this 40-year period that we had from the late 80s to the late 2020s, that the emphasis on Capricorn, the whole idea of complexes, whether it's pharmaceutical industrial complex, the military complex, the educational complex, the homeless industrial complex, everybody's using the word complex, and it's Capricorn energy. And it's like, okay, so we are not quite done yet. We still have Pluto dipping its toe into Aquarius. It's going to go for 2.5 months. The final death throes of Pluto in Capricorn starts around September 1st, right? Goes right through the election, the US election. And if you don't think that isn't going to be some sort of final attempt to lock in or lock down folks into some sort of complex and some sort of definable, registerable, predictable Saturnian type of format, good luck with you. That it's still coming. I honestly believe that once Pluto gets into Aquarius, I'm ready to say, okay, we're not in the crossover period anymore. We're in the age of Aquarius. The other big cycle that we're dealing with, the Neptune-Pluto cycle, right? The first time was 1891. A few times by 1892, the triple conjunctions that happen with the retrogrades and so on. Right? What were the three big developments in 1891? I had to go back and ask myself that question when I was getting ready for this lecture. And so, another thing, one of my favorite books, if you're going to study astrology, is this book, Timetables of History. All right. Too bad, though, that starting in the 1980s, they stopped printing the book. Now you got to go online. And if you go online, you don't know if you're getting the truth or not. All right. You're getting politically correct information or so on. But at least up until the 1980s, we have a more unbiased, of course, all history is biased, okay, but we have a more unbiased recording of what happened. Right? And so three things happened with the Neptune-Pluto conjunction. We came up with the wireless connectivity, the idea that you can affect something at a distance, you can communicate, you can touch somebody at a distance without having to be physically connected. We came up with the concept of antitoxins, the idea that the body can take care of itself, that it had the mechanisms and the powerhouses within the body to be able to create things that would kill off toxins in the body. Right? And then the other thing that we came up with was the first auto, the assembly line, or the things along this line having to do with mass consumption and mass. Not only were we able to contain the crucible, contain the energy within an internal combustion engine, we were able to make it mobile and replicatable. Okay, this is what Neptune and Pluto's brought us, and if you look at we've been sitting almost 100 years of Neptune sextile Pluto. And so we've gotten all these wonderful advances around wireless. Now we're pushing 5 and 6Gs. Okay, now we're pushing mRNA modifications instead of antitoxins. And now we're pushing things where the supply lines, they're reaching their capacity. We have to have robots doing them because humans can't do them anymore. When we move into the 2050s, actually more the 2060s, mid 2060s, when Neptune squares Pluto, we're going to have to come up with something different than 5G and 6G, because we're going to realize the effects that it's having on the biological systems. Actually, many people realize that now, but as a society, we'll finally get around to the idea that we need to correct that. Right? Same thing with the whole going from antitoxins to vaccines to mRNA, this and that, and DNA. Come the middle of this century, we're going to realize, boy, you think the old myths of, monsters and the Greek playing with DNA created all of the weird entities of the world. Wait until we get to the 2050s. We're going to be back in the same boat. And society under the square from Neptune to Pluto is going to have to figure out how to correct that, how to shepherd it again so that we don't continue to play God and create monsters and devils and angels and the same thing with the assembly lines. We're going to get to the point to come the middle of this 21st century where mass consumerism, the assembly line, the replicability of objects is not going to cut it anymore. We're actually going to move back, I think, into a period of time where we're going to see the artistry again and the individuality. And it's not going to be, you know, keeping up with the Joneses. It's going to be making a name for yourself. It's going to be, you know, the unique individual item that you have, that you created or that you had somebody create for you, but they're one of a kind. The mass consumerism is going to go out the window. So when I think about the squares from Neptune to Pluto, and I think of what we've done during the sextile and what was created at the conjunction, this is what I see. I say, well, we're going to get challenged. Remember, opening squares are like the midterm if you're taking a college course. It's where, okay, let's see what you know up till now. Let's see, you know, sit down. Let's do it. You know, where do we go from here? How are we going to graduate? How do we get to the oppositions? You know, the other thing that's happening too, that I love to talk about, is from the fall, from November of 2024 until July of 2025, just approximately 9 months, every single planet in our solar system is going to change signs. All right, every single planet in the course of 9 months. Okay, and which I think is interesting in and of itself. Okay, but I was always taught that signs are attitudes. Okay, and the planets are energies, signs are attitudes, houses are activities. Nutshell. Okay. And so if we have every single energy, every single planetary energy, masculine, feminine, teacher, transformer, you know, warrior, you name it, every single one of them changing attitudes in less than a year, all right, just think of what that is going to do. To me, I see that as like a major shift. And I really think that after that, people are going to be going, yeah, okay, Aquarian Age. Now we see the difference between Pisces. But, you know, Pisces was all about the heart. Aquarius is all about the mind. How do you connect the two? You know, Neptune and Pluto, I think if I was to try and sum it up with one word, I would say it was magic, or what we used to call magic. Okay, that there are no physical boundaries anymore when it comes to regeneration. Anybody can do it. Everything does it. Anybody can attempt it, and it all seems like an occult practice. You know, how did you make that happen? You know, they used to call it magic. It's just unknown science. You know, but I think the Saturn-Neptune, the Neptune-Pluto conjunction, especially it was in Gemini, as it was in the cycle before that in the late 1300s, we're getting hit with that Gemini energy and its information. The Jupiter-Saturns, now we've moved into air signs, right? The what, 800 plus year cycle, roughly 200 years per cycle, where you get like 10 to 13 Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions all in the same element. Okay, well, for the 1700s, 1800s, even late 1700s into 1800s, 1900s, there was a whole Jupiter-Saturns and Earth signs. Okay, right? What happened in 1980? Right, 1980, we get the Jupiter-Saturns dipping their toe into the air signs. And what did we get? We got the internet, we got the PC, we got battery technology, we got all of a sudden the ability to communicate, the ability to perceive and see what's going on in the other side of the world, the ability to read every single book on the planet. It all became possible. Roughly 800 years earlier, when the Jupiter-Saturns was taking place in air signs, it was the late 1300s, 1400s, and so on. It was the 8 Crusades that spread the East and the West. It combined them together, and it brought it was the beginning of the first universities. It was the beginning of the concept of explosive technology suddenly expanding faster than what seemed humanly possible in the world, you know. Then what happened in 2020? The Jupiter Saturn, it crossed back into Earth signs from 2020 to 2000 to 2020, I should say. Okay, with last Jupiter Saturns and Earth signs, and what do we get? We get all of the definitions. We get the CRISPR technology and the cloning, all right, and the dark matter. Okay, dark matter. I mean, come on. Oh, we know there's something out there. We don't know what it is, but we're going to give it a name. It's a substance, okay? So we started growing human organs. We started 3D printing food. You know, I mean, it was this final hurrah of the tangibility of existence. You know, now 2020, since 2020, we are now firmly and indelibly in the air signs for another 8, 9 Jupiter Saturn cycles or so. All right, and so it's going to be a cross pollination. The idea that we're seeing the immigration, the melting pot stuff, I call it the universal solvit instead of solvent. Okay, and the idea of no borders, cross borders, one world governments, all this kind of stuff. We're trying to create a sort of uniparty, you know, and true, that would be the higher side of the Aquarian concept. Two different things in perfect harmony, augmenting each other. They're not dissonant. They're not breaking. They're not like Pisces pulling away from each other. They're not like Gemini bound to each other. They're free floating. They're able to do what they want. Okay, but again, we are in this period where we're swinging back and forth with the extremes of what the Aquarian age can be. Oh, and another thing, the whole concept of the population explosion, how for most of my life, it was like, oh my God, you know, we're gonna grow ourselves out of the planet, you know, because we're multiplying like bacteria on the skin of an apple, and at some point we're going to kill the apple, and when cultures change ages, everybody wants to be here to experience that, which is why we've had the population explosions for the last 50 years, okay? But what's happening now? We're starting to see all these indications of population declination. And this is going to become quite extreme. That's part of one of the things that seems to happen in the changing of the ages is there's these huge mass population blooms that take place because everybody wants to experience it. And then once they experience a little bit, it's like, okay, been there, done that, bye, I'm off to another existence. And the population drops precipitously. Okay, so we also have that to look forward to over the next few generations. Whether you think it's caused by pharmaceuticals or whether you think it's caused by chemtrails or just disinterest or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's one of the huge cycles that takes place as we transition from age to age. So
Could you address the Uranus-Pluto conjunction which was in 65, 64, 65. Saturn now is in opposition to that point. They're going through their Saturn return. So this is pivotal in what's happening this year and next year. So it's Saturn in Pisces opposing the Uranus-Pluto conjunction in Virgo.
Okay, and what are we seeing? The division with to me, Saturn's job is to limit things by defining them. The more you define something, the more limited, the more precise it becomes, the more concretized it becomes. And the idea that even in the sense of gender, okay, you know, there used to be just two. which allowed for an intense expression, whether it was openly admitted or not. I'm not arguing that point, all right? But now the definitions have become so precise that there's what, 72 or over 100 different gender identifications now or something like that. And what has happened? People have fractured into these little groups and then some bigger groups amongst them. But it's this fracturing of and concretizing into mini groups, into their own little universes. And that, the Uranus Pluto was about destroying the culture, destroying the establishment, free love, free this, and so the Saturn opposition now, we're getting sort of a, I'm not quite sure I would call it a backlash, all right, but we're getting the complement to that. Yes, there has to be some sort of definition. Nothing is really free in the world, right? You pay for it one way or another, whether it's in time, money, or attention. So the idea of Saturn and Pisces, the whole idea of none of it was real. This is what's real. It's the mushrooms, or it's the marijuana, or it's the pharmaceutical, or it's the gender, or I can just create the Neptune and kind of Saturn and Neptune both. Neptune in Pisces, I think, is almost more of an issue that we're dealing with, and it seems to be the dissolution of identity in the sense of, I figured by the time Neptune got out of Pisces that the US government would federally approve marijuana, wouldn't be listed as a felony or even a misdemeanor, that it would be allowable like alcohol and so on. And that's just part of Neptune. What happened when Neptune first moved in? We got Instagram, the visual, the pictures and so on. We started hearing about all of the mental dysfunctions that were happening because people were getting addicted to their social media and so on. And the Uranus Pluto, I haven't really studied that much. I know we've been dealing with the square and we're getting the Saturn opposition. And to me, it's just an idea of we are getting a backlash. And again, it's a division. Not everybody's doing it. There's sections that are doing it and sections that aren't doing it. And it's being used as wedges again to divide us as a people. But the idea of, bodily autonomy, or freedom of spirit, freedom of religion, freedom of expression. Do
you think that it may have something to do, like in the United States, with our elections and the division and polarity within our culture, just in the United States, let alone other parts of the world? Because that Saturn, as this all started, was opposing that Uranus Neptune, and when it goes retrograde direct, it's sitting there at the elections.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. Well, what I've been tying my hat to on the distinctions in the United States has been the three eclipses, the solar eclipses that chopped and diced the United States up and split it in half in 2017, cut off the East Coast in 2023, cut off the West Coast in 2023, cut off the East Coast in 2024, and it created this kind of skull and crossbones kind of situation across the US. And so that's how I've been defining that. The Uranus, the concept that Uranus is in Pluto, that Uranus is going into Gemini, I have a lot to say about that. But one of the things that I want to realize, 2020, everybody knew that 2020, any astrologer knew that 2020 was a pivotal year. the grand conjunctions, you know, 5 major outer planet conjunctions in 1 year. That's only happened one other time, and it was in the 1950s. And then I was looking back hundreds of years, I couldn't find any other ones, you know, but the idea since 2020, we have been shifting from closing, you know, the 10 major outer planetary aspects that we tend to use for larger cyclical analysis. You know, come 2020, it made a major shift. And from 2019 to 2026, we go from only 3 opening cycles, opening, you know, sextiles or squares, or but the opening cycle, to 9 out of 10 opening cycles by the summer of 2026, culminating with what I've been calling the Mystic Bowl, January 20th, 2026, when you have Pluto and Neptune and Uranus and Jupiter all sextile and trine each other, forming a bowl. But on the 21st of July in that year, we get a skull cap with the moon acting as sort of like the bucket handle. But you know, that's something I could talk to. But to me, that's the peak. I've been watching this happening, and I've been feeling that from 20 into 2026, that we were going to have sort of I had been calling it a new roaring 20s, okay? But obviously it's not turning out to be something where everybody's just having a good old time, you know, but it is one of creativity, forced creativity, but people are coming up with major new ideas, major new inventions and systems and ways to stay viable in the world. And I think especially after we get all those planets over the 9 months from the fall of 2024 into the summer of 2025, all shifting signs, we're going to see some major cultural, I guess I would call them reboots, you know, shifts in society. So
Glenn, could you show us the US chart? Because we're not going to have too much longer before we need to go to questions and answers. And
okay,
so that in your interpretation of what you think is going to happen in the fall of the year.
okay, so here's first, I wanted to show this. This is the US chart with the, I think this is the Sibley chart, it's called, with the 12 Sags rising. But around the outside is December 21st, the winter solstice for 2012. And I just want to point out, look at this. The Uranus was 855, natal Uranus for the United States is 855. Jupiter was at 854, an exact conjunction. Jupiter conjunct Uranus in the 6th. And so, I mean, there's other things to look at, Mars over Pluto and so on. But this right there, to me, let me grab my notes on that, because I had some interesting stuff to say about that. Oh, right, I put it right on the charts. Okay.
And Mars is 21 Gemini, which is Trump's sun.
Yeah.
His sun is there.
Right. Yeah, and I'll get to Trump's chart and all too. But so the United States with the blackout, here's the United States with the Neptune, Pluto. Wait, backwards, did it backwards. Sorry. Okay, so what do we have here? We have, again, we have Uranus being triggered, this time by the Neptune-Pluto conjunction, within minutes, you know, and this Uranus in the 6th, I mean, the 6th is our ability to have a daily grind, a daily life, or daily systems, the ability to work with another and so on. And that Uranus, I mean, the Neptune Pluto, brought in the mass assembly line stuff, brought in the whole factory, you might say, concept. And now if we take it and look at election day for the United States, all right, okay, we're coming back up on eventually a Uranus return, but Jupiter this time is conjunct Mars. All right. Yeah. Now, I'm sure you guys are all aware of the idea that every time Uranus seems to go into Gemini, we have major wars in the United States. Okay, because of this Mars and Uranus conjunction on the descendant in Gemini. It's like this manifest destiny kind of thing, but we had the Civil War, we had the Revolutionary War, we had World War II, with, they were all mostly with Uranus going through Gemini. And we're coming up on that again. All right. But for the election, okay, I think it's interesting that we have Saturn right at the bottom of the chart, or right at the beginning of the fourth house cusp. So we're talking foundational issues. Okay. The idea that Mercury in Sag favors Biden initially, as does the sun and the midheaven in Scorpio. All right. But that's short-lived stuff. I think one of the things that's going to be happening is that Biden is going to be declared the winner, but before he gets sworn in, they will have found that things were skewed, and that I've been saying since 2016, whether I like his policies or not, that I figured Trump would be president in 2024. But I've also been saying that he would probably be out of office by May of 2025, because he's got, like, what is it, Pluto going into his 6th house, and his progressed midheaven going over his Pluto in the 12th house, and a few other things that to me are Mars is going over Pluto within the month. And there's a few things in there that say to me, and it says, I wonder if he's actually going to still be in office, to not have to say something that might get kicked us off of YouTube.
I did want to add in that the planet Mercury on the 25th of November goes retrograde at 22 degrees Sagittarius, which is Trump's moon. His eclipse moon, 22 Sag. So it goes back over the election point. So I think there is a recount that is going to be going on.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of what I've been believing was going to happen too. Here's Donald Trump's chart on election day. All right. Mars is right at the beginning of Leo. Okay. Trump's got Mars in Leo. I always love using this explanation. Does your audience know who Yogananda is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Yogananda and Trump both have Leo rising. All right. But whereas Yogananda had the moon on his rising sign, Trump has Mars on his rising sign. And that right there tells you the difference. I mean, you can see the difference in the two characters that way, and Mars on election day, Mars is going to, go forward and then back up and go back and forth. And it doesn't make it to his Pluto until somewhere about, I think it was May of 2025.
So tell us what you think this all means.
For the United States, well, the United States, we're still dealing with the Pluto return for the United States. And for years, I've been saying that's going to take the economy of the US and just crash it. We're going to lose our capital with amongst other countries in the world, and that it was going to take 8 to 10 years to be able to even just to resurrect that. All right. Pluto going into Aquarius, that's going to start triggering the US moon, which is the people, you know, and we have this long buildup of Pluto going through Aquarius, but it ends with Pluto conjunct the US moon in Aquarius. And I have to say, I live in California, okay, and I'm leaving California. I'm moving, you know, and I'm actually moving out of the country for 5 years. Then I'm probably going to move back. But that's how I'm dealing with it. I'm getting too old to be on the
Where are
front.
you going? Where are you going? Portugal or
Lake,
where?
Lake Chapala in Mexico.
Oh,
The chart for Mexico over the next 5 years, geopolitically, is great. Okay, it's got Jupiter up in the 10th house, and so it's getting that Jupiter in Gemini, so it's going to have the Jupiter return. It's going to have Uranus over Jupiter, a few other things that pretty well talk about the idea of Mexico becoming extremely prominent over the next 5 years. Plus, Yogananda even talked about the Lake Chapala area and had said that that was going to turn into a major spiritual center for the planet. And that was in 1929. So we're coming up on the 100-year anniversary for that. And so, Laura, do you remember Barbara Shermer?
not very well.
Okay. She used to live down there, used to teach at where I'm going to be teaching at the Lake Chapala Society down there. So,
Glenn, I have a question. What chart are you using for Mexico? Which date? Because there are so many, it's really confusing.
I would, gosh, I researched it in 1865, I think it was. Let me see if,
So not the independence, right? 16th of September, 1810.
Let me look. I have it in here because I looked at a few of the different charts, and then what am I using here? 1810, yeah.
Oh, yeah, good,
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm. You know, and look, it's got Gemini midheaven. Jupiter's going to be up there. Uranus is going to be going over Jupiter.
They just elected a new leader, and she
Yes.
is very prominent,
A woman.
very educated.
Yeah, and they've joined BRICS or joining BRICS or you know the and so on, and you know, I've had a bunch of people saying, yeah, but what about the politics? You know, 37 people got killed in the last elections and so on. And this is okay. Yeah, Mexico, it's a little bit more obvious.
But you know what? You know, they have Virgo rising, and they never really pull off fights with other countries. So all their fights are internal more.
Yeah, and there's no US military bases in Mexico, not a one.
Yes, there is.
You know, so the pushback that we are getting, the United States is getting as part of its messing around with countries as it has done, and its 800 or 900 military bases around the planet. If we ever do start getting boots on the ground here in the US, nobody's going to be touching Mexico. You know, it's almost neutral in a way that you know, there's no bases there. So, but that's off the subject. Let's get back to the United States here. And so, I mean, some other charts with the United States. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, right? If you look at the, how do I get rid of that bar? It's not allowing me to get up to the top here. Okay. Let's see. What do I want? This. Yes. All right, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, even the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was in the second house for the United States. And that's supposed to be a classic economic indicator, all right? And where did it fall in the US chart? In the second house. Where's it going to be hitting? Both, Pluto is eventually, before it gets anywhere near the moon, it's going to hit the south node. And I don't know about you guys, but I've always seen the south node, as the karmic baggage, good and bad, that we've brought forward into this lifetime. And if you're getting a Pluto transit over that, you're going to cauterize that stuff for good or for bad, and to me, that's like an Atlantean indicator, where we have to be careful with the gene splicing and the time tunneling and things that we're doing, because we're going to end up in the same boat. So some other things. I want to look back at the election day chart for the United States here. All right. Look where the ascendant is. Now, that was just for noon, I think I did for the election day. So I guess that doesn't really count that much. But I thought Saturn at the bottom of the chart was interesting. I thought that Uranus in the 6th was interesting. Jupiter over Mars. This does not bode well for us in Ukraine or Israel or Taiwan or any of those places, because it's just the 12-year peak of us being externally arrogant, I would say, or the know-it-all, but and then Mars coming up near the top of the chart and so on. So as far as also just the idea of Uranus in the 6th house, you're not going to be able to go by polls. You're not going to, because you're in the 6th house, you always end up with some sort of surprise. The people surprise you, or they're kept away from the polls, or somehow your daily regimentations are stripped away right when you expect to be able to go to the polls or to, get your ballot in the mail. I've always, I worked for the post office for many years, and I always thought that mail-in ballots was secure because of how I treated them, how our post office treated them. Those were the first thing that we handled. Nobody else touched them. They went into special containers and were shipped off right away. That we took them whether they had stamps on them or not. We'd still send them in, and it was honestly one of the more reputable things that we did as postmen, that I always thought that was cool. Oh, that was another thing. Learning astrology when I did in the 70s, I was going, oh my gosh, at some point, the post office is going to be the only way that you're going to be able to communicate anonymously. Because emails are tracked nowadays and this and that. And yes, they do photograph the outsides of the envelopes, but if you just wrap your correspondences in extra sheets of paper and then don't put the return address on the outside envelope, you can send stuff anonymously through the post office and nobody's going to be able to know what it is. And if you drop it in a collection box, unless they start scanning things for fingerprints, with AI, they're not going to know which letters is whose. And so just saying, when you see your postman, give him a thank you. So
Glenn, we're going to need you to kind of wind it up. So we want to start at this point or very quickly, where the audience can ask questions.
okay. Let me just, one last thing. All right, this Saturn-Neptune conjunction coming up at less than 1 degree of Aries. I just want people to note that the last time that we had a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, the exact year that it happened was the year that there was a corporation, American corporation, that was started to ship slaves from Africa to the United States. It was called the Asiento Guinea Company. And this was the last time we had Saturn, Neptune conjunct in Aries. And that aligns with what I'm expecting to happen with the Saturn, Neptune in Aries, which is we're not going to be able to rely on any sort of major utility systems, the Social Security, the medical industry, you name it, or whatever. It's going to be very tenuous, I guess is the word I would use. And we are going to be on our own. We are going to have to deal with taking care of ourselves, our own self-service, our own self-identity, not allowing others to shackle us and send us off to work in some foreign land. So, okay, I'm done.
All
Question?
right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so anyone here who has a question that you want him to address? I know you do,
You want me to use that camera? or
but I don't know what. Anyone here has a question?
Is there anything good to look forward to?
Have you ever read the Carlos Castaneda books?
Yes,
Okay, you remember the concept of the petty tyrant?
yeah,
Okay, what is it?
that which you have outside yourself that gnaws away at you. It's like, so
Yeah,
you
it's-
make,
It's okay, it's pretty much, you don't honor the people that make your life easy, you honor the people that make your life shit. Okay, because they're the ones that push you to reach past boundaries and go where no man or woman's gone before. And it's the stress, it's the squares, it's the oppositions in life that cause us to reach for the stars, that cause us to create new things, create new boundaries and new lives and stuff. And as I said, I was initially calling the mid-2020s the new roaring 20s, because I believe there's going to be a massive flowering of
Yeah.
discovery, of invention, of new systems, of new situations, you know, new. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, I think at the moment, is blockchain. Okay, it's, you know, been around for a while, but it's really ramping up. You know, by the mid-20s, we're going to see that in everything, not just cryptocurrency, you know, but I got too many planets in Scorpio. To me, if you want things to be good, you have to dump the cup first. You have to get rid of the old crap that's in the cup. You don't just pour new stuff in and have it be
cleanse,
poisoned, you know, by what's already in the cup. You have to empty the cup, and that emptiness process is always scary. It's always something that has to be done individually. It's not something that we can rarely do as a group. It's something that we each individually have to do, you know. And I think, as far as astrology is concerned, we're in the right profession. I think over the next 2-3 generations, there is going to be a revival that will be phenomenal, and that given the right circumstances, we all can be part of the fertilizer that made that happen. You know, it's things die, but they become fertilizer. They're the things that create the new stuff. You know, the snake sheds its skin, the
But
phoenix.
as you say, the ethics are just so key. They're just so important, the ethics.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the part. And that's individual. That's not something you get from a group. That's not something you get from God. That's not something you get from your dreams or your guides or whatever. It has to be in you. It has to be in your heart, in your stomach, in your mind, and in your mouth. You know, in your throat. You need to speak it too. That's why I called this walk your talk. You know, we can't just talk about the benefits. We have to be the examples. We have to be the ones that are the flag bearers. You know, we have to think like Sagittarians for a while, and you know, okay, you know, let's lead the charge, you know. So
I have a question for you. Do you think that with our Pluto return, that and plus Saturn going through Pisces, that the United States is going to rewrite its constitution?
yes, I've been predicting that for 6-7 years now. And I've also been predicting that the boundaries of some of the states would shift. You know, and recently I learned that Texas is the one state that's allowed to secede from the Union without having Congress's approval, you know, and so it's like, I wonder if they're going to be first. Remember those 2 of the 3 eclipses that happened recently in the US, the shadows cut right through the middle of Texas. You know, but now we've got this greater Idaho.
Stock
greater,
exchange is moving to Texas too, right?
yeah, Texas, Missouri, there's like 7 different succession movements happening. But the one that seems to be the strongest is the one where they're going to split Oregon down the middle, and the eastern half is going to go to Idaho, and the western half is going to stay Democratic, you know, and so, and where I live up in Siskiyou County, I've just been waiting for the state of Jefferson or for us to separate ourselves from Sacramento. And I'm like, greater Idaho, take us, please, you know, take Siskiyou County. You know,
Did you ever do the chart of the state of Jefferson?
I have not, no.
I haven't either. But you
Oh,
see
but
the
for us-
signs as you go up into Oregon from California, state
Yeah.
of Jefferson.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. The real estate agency that I have selling my house is called the State of Jefferson Realty.
Wow.
Oh, he's really serious. You
Yeah.
know,
All right.
we have one more question from
But
the
well,
audience.
just one thing real quick, though. The state of
Yeah.
Jefferson has been started and stopped a few times. So
Okay.
I don't really know what the birth chart would be. It'd probably be the first one, you know, but
Yeah, and Jennifer was asking a little earlier about the outer planets, because you mentioned that all of them, they're all changing signs. They're all pretty much going into air and fire. So and she was asking like when they each go, when they each change, because you said a period.
okay. So I wrote this down because this is the kind of stuff I don't remember. You know, Neptune goes into the Pisces the first time in March 30th of 2025. Saturn goes into Pisces the first time May 25th, 2025. And Uranus goes into Gemini July 7th, 2025. And then Pluto will have gone into Aquarius for the last time somewhere in there too. I didn't write that one down. But I mean, Pluto goes into Aquarius. That's the one that starts it in this November.
We have someone who has a question here.
Mhm.
I'm Russian, so I'm interested when this war is gonna end.
The Ukrainian war, the one that we're dealing with now? Okay, when I did my forecast for March of 2022, I saw that Mars-Pluto coming, and I said, okay, there's going to be some sort of major war or something. And the Ukraine war blasted into being 5 days from the Mars-Pluto conjunction. And I looked at that at the time, and I looked at the chart for Ukraine, the 2014 chart of Ukraine, and I said, oh my God, this is not going to end well. Russia is going to win this. I figured it was going to be over by October of the same year. If you look at, you got to look at Putin's chart for that. All right. And Putin has got, I actually have his chart here. So, but one has to look at the idea that he has Pluto conjunct his south node in Leo on his midheaven. Okay. If that isn't somebody who has been some sort of grand poobah in the past, I don't know what is. Okay. So he's definitely repeating his stuff. And one of the things that was going on when this war started was Uranus was going over his Jupiter and Saturn was going through his fourth. All right. And I said, oh, he's trying to recreate the old Russian Empire. He wants to leave a legacy. All right. So he's not done with that. And the Ukraine chart is just a, did I put the Ukraine chart in through here?
Well, you haven't shared it. You haven't
What's
put
that?
any up.
You did not share anything, any charts.
Oh, sorry. That's right. I have to share the screen. All right. So here's Putin's chart. Let me just show it natally. Ah. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes,
Yeah. All right. See this Pluto South Node conjunction on the 10th house cusp in Leo? I was like, holy cow. And I looked at this and I said, okay, so both Biden and Putin have many planets in the 12th house. Okay. Putin's got 3, almost 4 planets in Libra in the 12th, but he's got Scorpio rising. Biden's got what, 4 planets in Scorpio in the 12th house, but he has Sag rising. And so the United States is Sag rising. So in general, the Scorpio rising guy is going to be the bad guy. The Sag rising is going to be the American guy, regardless of whether they were president or not. And I just looked at that and I said, okay, but who's the one that is likely to be the one that is going to be most open to advice from other people? Do you think it's Biden with all his planets in Scorpio, or you think it's Putin with all his planets in Libra? Yeah. So anyhow, I think we are overstepping our hand. I think it's part of our Pluto return and Pluto going over our south node that we are overextending ourselves around the world and promising things that that other countries now know. We've lost our standing. We've lost our capital. They now know we are not the Praetorian Guard of the zodiac anymore. You know, we are of the world. We are
I
no
consider
longer.
those planets in Capricorn, Pluto going back in as the old guard, finishing out their time on this earth plane.
Right, right. And so did I answer the Ukraine?
Well, I wanted to ask if there's anyone in the Zoom audience who has a question. We haven't heard anything from you.
It's send a text out.
Anyone there? Let me look here. Christina, did you have a question? No, okay. And then Claire, do you have a question? You would have to unmute yourself if you do, and Marion and Janet is there also. Any one of you has a question, now's the time to ask it because we only have a few minutes left here.
Well, I think we were talking about some time ago, Saturn and Pluto, Saturn and Neptune going into
Aries.
Aries. And when that goes in, I think the last time was start of the Civil War.
It was, well, the last time it went in, I was looking at the last time we had Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Okay, I didn't write down the actual date, but I had written down that the big thing that happened at the time was the Americans started importing slaves.
Okay, I think the year was 1861.
I think that sounds correct.
Yeah.
You know, and it's going to happen with Uranus and Gemini, and you know, and so Uranus and Gemini seems to be the when we get called up to the services for the United States. So what was the question about that?
Oh, just that.
Oh, was it during the Civil War?
That's what happened during the Civil War, which would maybe make the date for the importation of slaves a bit earlier.
And the
Well,
North,
they were probably doing it individuals, but they actually started a company, started a corporation at right, like within a month of the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries to
Okay.
actually turn it into a business where the,
Uh-huh.
it was almost like a corporation, you know, people were investing in it, and it wasn't just somebody would have a benefactor and take a ship and bring some people. That they started mass shipping, you know.
also, I felt like the Neptune finishing up the sign of Pisces has a lot to do with the fentanyl
Oh,
issues.
Absolutely, yeah, and also you notice how the magic mushrooms and things like that are becoming a little bit more politically or sociologically correct
And then
lately.
also-
Psilocybin.
Yeah, and also
Yeah.
exactly ayahuasca and peyote ceremonies, even in the spiritual side circles.
Yeah. Now,
Now, what do you think of the North Node moving into conjunct Neptune, and it does that at the beginning of next year?
what does that happen about every 20 years or so for Neptune?
Every 18.6.
Oh, yeah, but then Neptune keeps moving too, right? So it's every 18.6 Neptune would be back. I mean, the node would be back in the same sign, but conjunct Neptune would be a little later.
Right, moving into position though.
Position. Okay.
I don't know
So
the exact. But I
Uh,
felt like maybe that has something to do with becoming more spiritually conscious and or maybe even a leader who has some spiritual values coming in.
well, yes, I agree with that. Okay. I also look at the North Node. I have my North Node conjunct my moon. I was born like a day after a solar eclipse in Scorpio, or in late Libra, actually. But
We do it.
the North Node, to me, is something that we can only approach when we feel safe and secure and comfortable. And that if we're stressed, if we're anxious or fearful or whatever, we run to our South Node. That's our go-to.
We want to thank you. We are right at 9 o'clock and I really appreciate everything that you've said. It's a lot of information. We're at a point where we have to leave here because they cut us out at 9 o'clock.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. And
Yeah, and
loaded third house. I like to talk.
all righty. And if people want to get hold of you, they can. We have the data in the write-up.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's easy. Mount Shasta Astrology.com.
Mount Shasta.
Well,
So
I'm moving from one mountain to another.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate all of you coming tonight. This is our last meeting for this, until the next season of, September. And we have a medical doctor coming in and speaking on, health and nutrition when the sun is in Virgo. So conjunct my moon when that lecture takes place. And yeah, yours too.
Make sure I get a robocall on that one to.
Yeah, I will. I send out those robocalls to everyone. I know you get irritated with it, but that's where we let you know to remember.
Right, yeah.
All righty, thank you.
Laura.
Thank you.
When the war's gonna be over, the Russia, can
Yeah.
you do it? When is it gonna be over?
The
He's
Ukraine.
going to end with Russia assimilating that.
Well, when is that? 25, 26?
So they need to know, if you know when the war is going to be over in Russia.
I do not. I think I actually think it's been over for a year and a half and they're just dragging a dead horse.
And Europe, they're slicing countries.
Okay,
They're-
well,
they're
thank
doing it
you,
already.
sweetie. We have
Mhm.
so many questions. We'll have to have you come in and do a workshop.
Yeah, they do.
Oh,
That
sure.
might be a better way to do it. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you in
Thank you. Bye.
September. Bye.
Oh,
Bye, Glenn. Thank
Bye.
you.
yeah.